Let's review what we learned last week. Last week we talked about how God created the world in 6 days. First, He created a home for everything, and then He put everything in its home. Day 1 and day 4 go together. Day 2 and day 5 go together. Day 3 and day 6 go together. On day 1 and day 4, God was creating time. Genesis 1:14 tells us exactly what all that stuff is for in outer space. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years." We saw that the year happens when the earth travels all the way around the sun. We saw that a month begins when the moon is dark. Then it gradually gets lighter and lighter each night until it reaches full moon on the 14th or the 15th of the month. Then it gets darker and darker again until it's totally dark, a new moon. We learned that there are 7 days in a week because God created everything in 6 days, then He rested on the 7th day. In the Bible, the days don't have names, they just have numbers, all except the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is when God rested after He created the world, and He wants us to rest every 7 days too. Then we learned about the 4 holidays that God commanded Israel to keep from Leviticus chapter 23. God loves holidays. I love holidays. Do you like holidays? The first holiday has 4 parts to it, actually. It was like 4 holidays wrapped up in one. The first part was Passover. That was on Aviv 14, or we can call that April 14th on our calendar. That's when a lamb was killed and the blood protected them from the angel of death. So every year they remember that that's what happened the very first time. The very next day is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That starts on Aviv 15, and that lasts for 7 days. During the Feast of Unleavened Bread is the celebration of first fruits, and that's on whatever the Sunday is. So the first day after Sabbath is what God said. So each family brought some freshly sprouted stalks of grain for that ceremony. And then 7 weeks later is the Feast of Weeks. So after they counted 7 weeks from that first fruits, the first fruits, then they had another first fruits. So they changed the name to the Feast of Weeks so you wouldn't get confused. But 7 weeks later, each family baked a loaf of bread from the harvest grain that they had, and then they brought that to the ceremony. This is how people kept track of time in the ancient world. They looked up at the cosmic clock.